The new ABC News Washington Post poll out this morning, which turns out to be a pretty bleak snapshot of the economy. The good news, half of Americans say the recovery is beginning, but the vast majority fear it will be weak, all because of those huge job losses. They're fueling deep pessimism. And when he talked to Charlie Gibson, President Obama said those job losses caught him by surprise.
We didn't understand the rapidity of job losses in those first 3 months, January, February, March, actually starting in December. You saw 700,000 jobs lost or 650,000 jobs lost in each of those months. Knew at that point the job growth was going to be lagging severely, and that was going to be one of our greatest challenges.
Boy, there's an understatement. And for more on this, we're joined now by two economic powerhouses, Chief Investment Strategist at Charles Schwab, Liz Ann Saunders, and New York Times reporter and author of Too Big to Fail, Andrew Ross Sorkin. And there does seem to be, from this poll, a little more hope out there. Half of the country believes this recovery has begun, but they don't think it's going to be much of a recovery. And Liz Ann, that seems to mean that the country is pretty much in line with what most experts think.
Look, when you look at the depth of the downturn, and you look at the history of deep recessions, they are usually followed by very quick pops out of the recession. In fact, if you were to look at an average, it would suggest about an 8 or 9% GDP in the first or second quarter of this recovery. We obviously didn't get that in the first quarter of recovery. We're unlikely to get it. So there's no question that this has been a subdued recovery in light of just how damaging the recession was. So that's an easy call.
So we're not seeing that rubber band
right.
effect, and that means unemployment through most of next year, very high unemployment.
Through most of next year. And part of the problem is, we look at this 10% number, and there's some economists, frankly, that think it could get worse, marginally worse.
Yeah, Larry Summers told me on Sunday
he
job
thinks
growth this quarter.
But I'll tell you the hard part. The hard part is actually a number that people don't pay attention to, which is the average hours worked every week, which is only 33, which is a real low, which means that if you want to be more productive, you're a business, you think you want to go hire more people, you just make the person who's working 33 hours work 35. So there's a lot of room in between before we're going to actually get that 10% number to really come down.
Yeah, a lot of businesses and a lot of state and local institutions cut back. They said take Fridays off,
exactly.
One Friday off a month. Meanwhile, we saw the Federal Reserve yesterday come out with a statement saying they expect interest rates to remain low for a pretty long period of time, even though they're starting to pump back their emergency programs. Ben Bernanke yesterday named Person of the Year by Time magazine, but he's running into a bit of a buzzsaw in his Senate confirmation. Did he deserve the honor? Is he doing the right thing now?
Well, look, let's remember sometimes Time names a person of the year because of their influence, not necessarily as full-blown praise. So I think he has been an extraordinarily influential person. I understand the split. I think Bernanke, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacking of last fall's emergency efforts, but I think that piece of his history will go down on the positive side of the ledger, and we won't know what ifs. We only know that he seems to have prevented the kind of collapse that was a possibility. It's what predated that, I think, that gets the most just criticism.
And the question now, Andrew Ross Sorkin, is he waiting too long to put on the brakes? Some people worried about that. He says low interest rates for a long period of time.
I suspect that, but we may not feel it that way. So there will be low interest rates probably through the rest of this year. However, he's got to start taking his foot off the brake on some of the other programs which have pumped a lot of money into the system. And unfortunately, what that means is higher mortgage rates as we get closer to the summer.
Because the banks have been using that money.
Exactly.
Bringing us back to the banks, the president started off this week calling in all the bankers to Washington. A few of them didn't make it.
Right.
It seemed like a little bit of a message to the president. First of all, how hard do you think they tried to get down?
I actually do think they tried to get down, but I think there's a larger issue, which is that now that these banks have paid back the TARP money, now that we, the taxpayers, are no longer shareholders, whatever leverage you thought the government had over these companies in terms of the financial reform, and we'll see some proposals, obviously, and some change, but the real change that I think some people were hoping for, suspected would take place, it's going to be harder to get there.
Let me go back to the poll for a second. Two other pretty disturbing numbers in the poll, Liz Ann. 60% of Americans think the economy is in long-term decline, and 64% worried about maintaining their standard of living over the long term. That seems like the definition of the kind of malaise that Jimmy Carter had to deal with back in the 70s. What is the real economic impact of those kinds of attitudes?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's all that abnormal when you have the kind of deep recession that we have had, accompanied by double-digit unemployment. If you go back to 1983, when we had close to an 11% unemployment rate, we were coming out of back-to-back recessions over a very extended period of time. A lot of similarities to the current environment. You had similar levels of pessimism. What we didn't know at that time was we were about to unleash an 18-year period of unprecedented growth and prosperity. I would love for that to be what we're facing in the next 18 years. It is certainly not the base case call, but I think we have to remember the pessimism that is bred after such a deep downturn is actually fairly normal because people are in that sort of emotional mode.
But it broke for Ronald Reagan. Will it break for Barack Obama?
Well, let's hope.
We'll see. Liz Ann Saunders, Andrew Ross Sorkin, thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.